A very good morning to everyone present here. All the participants are requested to follow the protocols for the smooth conduct of this session. We request your cooperation in the conduct of the smoothly. All the participants are requested to rename themselves with the registered names only. All the participants are requested to keep their videos disabled and audio on mute mode during the session. Queries from the participant will be taken at the end in the question answer session. All the participants are requested to present throughout the session. The certificate will be provided only to those who have registered with us, filled the feedback form. Thank you. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. With this note, a very good morning to everyone present here. I, Manisha Rani, Faculty Department of Commerce, Shivaji College, take this privilege to welcome you all present here on this webinar on strategies for India's economic growth in the VUCA world organized by Department of Commerce, Shivaji College, under the aegis of IQAC. Shivaji College is a premier institution under University of Delhi and it is accredited with A grade by NAC. Our Department of Commerce is the largest in terms of number of students. Our department has a glorious history of conducting various faculty and student-centric activities like FDPs, conferences, seminar, webinars, and various activities. Today, continuing the same legacy, we are here in this with this webinar. Today, we are very delighted to have among us a very renowned academician, Professor Alok Pandey, Director, IMS Ghaziabad. But before hearing from Sir, I would request the convener of this webinar, Dr. Ramesh Kumar Malik Sir, to say a few words. Dr. Ramesh Sir. I would request the convener of this webinar, Dr. Ramesh Kumar Malik Sir, to say a few words.
Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, Malik साहब.
स्वागत है सर जी.
सर
पांडे सर जी. तो कन्वीनर के नाते मैं सबका स्वागत कर हमारे प्रिंसिपल डॉक्टर शिव कुमार सहदेव जी का. हमारे प्रिंसिपल सर ने अभी इसी साल मार्च में अपना पद ग्रहण किया है, लेकिन उस सिर्फ 7 महीने के कार्यकाल में शिवाजी कॉलेज ने एक लंबी छलांग लगाई है रैंकिंग में, चाहे वो इंडिया टुडे है और नेक भी बड़ा जल्दी होने वाला है दूसरी बार. तो उसमें भी हम आशा करते हैं कि पहले हमें ए ग्रेड मिला था, अब हमें A+ मिले. सर की खासियत है कि सर को अगर हम कह देते हैं कि हमें कोई वेबिनार करना है, FDP करनी है, तो सर एकदम से रेडी हो जाते हैं और परमिशन शायद पहले ही दे देते हैं पूछने से पहले. फिर मैं स्वागत करता हूं आज के हमारे स्पीकर प्रोफेसर आलोक पांडे जी का, जो डायरेक्टर हैं IMS गाजियाबाद में. पांडे सर को मैंने 2 या 3 बार FDP में और वेबिनार वगैरह में सुना है, और सर अपने स्पीकिंग से, अपने लेक्चर से मंत्रमुग्ध कर देते हैं, और सुनने के बाद सिर्फ एक ही बात मुंह से निकलती है कि वाह क्या बात है. तो मैं स्वागत करता हूं हमारे TIC सर का भी, और हमारी सीनियर मोस्ट फैकल्टी सुमन खरबंदा जी का, जिनका सहयोग हमेशा हमारे साथ बना रहता है. मैं स्वागत करता हूं हमारे सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स का, और हमारे जितने भी कुलीग हैं, चाहे शिवाजी कॉलेज से हैं, चाहे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी के अदर कॉलेज से हैं, तो मैं स्वागत करता हूं सबका. थैंक यू वेरी.
Now, I would request our respected principal, Sir Dr. Shiv Kumar Sehdev, to say words.
Thank you, Professor Alok Pandey ji, all the esteemed participants, dear colleagues and dear students. I am very happy that our Commerce Department has organized this webinar today on a very interesting topic, and Professor Alok Pandey is here with us today, and I am sure that we all will enjoy his talk. So I will not take much time. My wishes for the success of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Now I would request Dr. Anubha to formally introduce our resource person. Dr. Anubha.
Thank you, Manisha. I, Dr. Anubha, take the privilege to formally introduce Professor Alok Pandey. Professor Alok Pandey is the Director of Legacy Brand B School, Institute of Management Studies, Ghaziabad. Additionally, he is an independent director on the board of India's largest e-governance company, functioning under Ministry of Electronics and Technology, Government of India. He is the chairman of Index Advisory Committee of MCX and member of Education Committee of Confederation of Indian Industries. He is alumnus of University of Lucknow and Banaras Hindu University. Professor Alok Pandey is the senior faculty at IMT Ghaziabad, Lal Bahadur Shastri, Institute of Management, Delhi, National Institute of Finance Management. He has also been the Director Advanced Study at Institute of Cost Accountant of India. He is having teaching experience at various premier business schools such as IIM Lucknow, IIFT New Delhi, Goa Institute of Management. He has presented several research papers, articles in national and international conferences in India as well as other countries. He also served as sir, can I request to undo the annotations?
Madam, I think it's enough. I think you've introduced me enough. Let me just start the session.
Sorry, sir, actually,
they understood who I am, right?
Yes. Some students have annotated the screen, so that's why.
It's not. It's from your side, I think.
I think our screen present nahi hui hai.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So, sir, I welcome you once again.
Right, thank you.
It is very pleasure to listen your valuable input, sir. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. So, in fact, ये अभी जो सहदेव साहब सिंह साहब, we had सहदेव साहब प्रिंसिपल थे हमारे, और उसके पहले मलिक साहब थे ना. So, Mr. Malik, Professor Sehdev, Dr. Rajinder Singh, Manisha ji, Anubha ji, thank you very much for the wonderful program which you are organizing. And probably my idea is that as a teacher, as a person who is part of the academic fraternity, we all are one, and we often sometimes have something or the other to give. We have some capabilities, or we have some understanding about some areas. And it is my duty to share my ideas with the community and student community at large. Why I always believe that the students of today are the leaders of tomorrow. If we are able to give them the right advice, if we are able to pass on our wisdom to those students, it becomes very possible that this country will become better off than it is today. My only assumption in life is that our students should become better than us. अगर हम उन्हें पढ़ाएं वो हमसे बेहतर हो जाएं. जैसे हम उम्मीद करते हैं अपने खुद के बच्चों से कि साहब वो हम उन्हें ऐसा बनाएं कि वो हमसे बेहतर हो जाएं. So I assume that all teachers, all my colleagues always believe कि ये जो students हमें सुनते हैं या हमसे पढ़ते हैं, they should be in a position to grasp enough to become better. With those objectives in mind, I am sharing my screen here. Just a minute. So, the topic which I'm going to discuss today is strategies for India's economic growth in the volatile world. And this volatile big world is not just volatile, it is uncertain, it is complex, and it is ambiguous. So, as the director of the Institute of Management Studies, I'll just give you a small idea. Anubha ji has spoken a lot about me, but not about my institute. It will be wrong to say that, I should be known to people and not my institute, although this institute is 30 years old. Just a few ideas as to what this institute is all about. We offer full-time management programs, which are called Postgraduate Diploma in Management, PGDM, We also have PGDM in International Business and Big Data Analytics. The institute is accredited by NAC. Our PGDM program is accredited by NBA. Yesterday, I've received a 1-year extension for my NBA program as well. So NBA accreditation till 2021, NAC accreditation till 2021. We have AACSB Education Alliance. We have joined. We'll get the accreditation by 2024. The institute was established way back. The institute was established way back in 1990. And till that time, we have got all the possible accreditations, etc., which are mandatory. Faculty and research, you can always look at our website and find out. We have 45 close to full-time faculty members with wide experience and background. Excellent placement at the institute for last 30 years, partially because we have 6,000 plus alumnus in the industry. And these alumnus, we are proud of them because majority of them also are holding positions like CEO and MD in various organizations. We've got wonderful library and learning resources. Our digital resources are the best. You combine all top institutes in Delhi on one side, and IMS Ghaziabad has all those resources which you feel are available in any other institute in Delhi. In fact, you combine all of them, we have equivalent resources. You can click to our library on the website to find out. We have a 400-seater hostel with all the modern amenities. And of course, we do a lot of activities throughout the year, from an ad-mad show, a triathlon, Technotsav, APJ Kalam debate competition, essay writing competition, quiz competition, Vatayan, the summer internship project competition, which is on 3rd of this month, professional seminars, 5 academic conferences last year. We organize those international study trips, etc. And of course, an annual fest for the students. Of course, the 21-23 batch admissions are open. We are through CAT as well as some other testing scores. People can visit our website. Now, let me come to this topic, which is strategies for India's economic growth in volatile and uncertain world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, which we call VUCA. So what do I mean by VUCA and what does it really mean? You know, the moment you say the word VUCA, you start thinking, what is this? What is it that, you know, makes the world volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous? If I tell you, India's GDP contracted by 25% approximately last quarter. They say that from around 3 trillion, we could be down to up to like 2.5, we could be down to up to 2.5 trillion even. All the major indices, you look at our stock market, which is in a yo-yo format. Today's newspaper, I was going through it, you know, it tells me all the major indices. I can show you this. See the indices, the way, when you say volatility, all the indices are in red. Those students must see this, the red lines, which are the bottom, you know, as you go, you see the decline is faster than the uptrend. Now, when the decline is faster than the uptrend, what do I mean by that? It means that we could be at a time where our earnings may dip more than what we believe. Our economy and its capacities may dip, and we may find it difficult to come up if the decline is more than usual. You know, a normal decline in anybody's life is fine. But if the decline is too much, it could be a signal of something more nefarious. It could be something, you say uncertain. Uncertain basically means that whatever I wish to do, it may not happen. Complex. Complex basically means that the world is a kind of a place where people say one thing and do another thing. That's called complexity. You see one thing and it actually is not there. So what you see is not what the reality is. So complexity actually means that you are unable to understand the interlinkages between various phenomenon. And this means that you are unable to understand how to solve it. You know, it's like a maze which you are unable to solve. Ambiguous, again, ambiguity basically means that people are saying one thing and doing another thing. Like, so, you know, when you look at ambiguity, when you look at complexity and ambiguity go hand in hand often. You need to be careful as to how to deal with it. So why is the world in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous mode? So let me tell you in brief, volatile, it means that you have a very high standard deviation. Uncertainty would mean that you do not know whether what you expect is going to happen. Complex means that you do not understand the interlinkages, and ambiguous means that what you see is not what it is. So why is it so much in a VUCA mode? Probably we've got a very rapid technological growth in last 2 decades, right? From a C++ kind of an environment, and from a computer where you had to type in commands to run it, to a graphic user interface, from a world where we used to stand in a queue to get a telephone connection, to a point where the telephone connections are easily available and you can carry a telephone anywhere. 20 years ago, we only had landline phones. Today, you can carry a telephone connection with you anywhere. 20 years ago, you could barely speak to other people on a phone. Today, you can watch them on phone. And today, just see, I'm sitting in an institute in Delhi, in NCR region, and anybody across India can see me presenting it. And we are not on a television channel. This is a video conferencing and an improvement in it. So this is another aspect. Greater connectivity. We've got much wider, better connectivity. And what does connectivity do? It allows contagion to move from one place to the other. So the markets fall, stock markets fall in a country, the impact is felt in another country. You can use social media now to influence elections, say in US, say in India, say in Russia, everywhere. Facebook is under a charge. Why is it that Facebook executives were called by Delhi Assembly? Why is it that the American Congress asked these major internet giants, which is called Google, Amazon, Facebook, etc., and called them for a hearing and said that you are trying to control the world? They are getting the benefit of better telecom and internet connectivity, and they're controlling our behavior. They're controlling everything. And this connectivity is not just increasing the levels of volatility, it is also making the world more ambiguous. So the person you elect using Facebook as the president may become the worst president or the worst prime minister. You may never know, and you may regret. Another issue is rising global tensions and reduction in credibility of multilateral institutions. Our Honorable Prime Minister addressed the UN General Assembly a few days ago, and he questioned why India is being declined a seat in UN General Assembly. You look at it, when the coronavirus spread, the first organization to come under scanner was World Health Organization. And US directly accused the chairman of World Health Organization to be in kowtow with the Chinese government. And they said because WHO is funded by China, they hid the idea of this virus which spread around the world. And that was a major problem. And so slowly you have less faith on United Nations, you have less faith on WHO, you have less faith on World Bank, you have less faith on IMF, and that is creating global tensions. Another one is called rising aspirations of humans. We as human beings, because we have a bigger brain, we've got larger cells, neurons in our brains, we are controlling the entire world. And today we want to destroy this world. How do we want to destroy this world? We do not know our consumption levels. We have no control over our consumptions. If coronavirus has spread around the world, the reason is human beings. We have destroyed the forests on the planet. When you destroy the forests on the planet, the bats who live normally in forests come to the cities. And with bats comes viruses. Coronavirus family is carried by bats across the world. And they say that from the market in Wuhan, where the virus came, they were eating bats. So, one, we eat all the animals. Two, just see the amount of wildfire around the world. There was wildfire in Australia this beginning of the year. There's a huge wildfire in California, in US. Thousands and thousands of acres of forests have been destroyed. Just because India, once again, let me tell you, we have also been responsible for unplanned urbanization. Just because we need a place to live in, we destroy the habitat of other animals. Just because we have bigger brains than other animals does not mean that we'll destroy their habitats. And thus, we have brought in something called change in our environment and climate. This climate change, why are we talking about volatile weather? Why so much of flood happened this year? Why the temperatures are rising? And yes, why we know that 30 years down the line, there could be no water and there could be water war. So when you look at the VUCA world, let us find out how can India face the challenge. The first way of India facing the challenge is that our leadership has to understand it. I'll not focus much on the global ideas. Let me tell you, when I said VUCA world, let me tell you a couple of other things about volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. You know, you can be talking about this volatile world, and you know, you can be talking about this idea that how do I tackle all this? Let me tell you, it requires vision, it requires understanding, it requires clarity, and this requires agility. So I have given another name for VUCA. I don't say VUCA is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. I say VUCA stands for vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So what is it that our leadership needs to have? When I say, you know, vision, for me, vision actually means being adaptive and innovative. When I say understanding, according to me, understanding is practicing risk management. Uncertainty means understanding. Practicing risk management and looking at all the possible perspectives and looking at all the possible ideas before taking a decision. When I say complexity, I say clarity. Why? Look at cause and effect relationships. Identify what causes what. Understand the maze. Travel through the maze. Improve your education. Improve your understanding. Improve your exposure. The bigger your education, the bigger your exposure, bigger will be your common sense and bigger would be your general knowledge. And then you will be able to understand the world, solve the complexities better. And finally, when I say ambiguity, I call it agility. It basically means that you should be able to understand multiple points of views. You should be able to understand everyone around you. You must try not to find out permanent solutions. You must say, okay, you are also right. You are also right. Let me see, how can we best find a solution to the problem? If you always say, no, I am always right, and this is the final solution, you are not going to. So let's be agile in terms of understanding people and also understanding ourselves. So the key leadership approaches for India in this VUCA world, they are practicing inclusivity, practicing sustainability, practicing how to enable the people at the bottom of the pyramid, promoting frugal innovation and social entrepreneurship, and ensuring that companies who are making money, they become more responsible. They are making money from you and me. Why can't they be more responsible? Remember, I'm not saying everybody is irresponsible. There are people who are like Narayan Murthy. There are people like Tata Group, Birlas, Ambanis, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, several other organizations in the world who have shown huge amount of corporate social responsibilities. Tatas have actually developed cities after cities. Birlas have developed cities after cities. Reliance has built cities after cities. You have a lot of companies. Infosys stands as the colossus of what is called corporate social responsibility. They've given created so many jobs and facilities for people around the country. So, you know, what we need to understand that all these factors together, practicing inclusivity, sustainability, enabling the bottom of the pyramid, promoting frugal innovation and social entrepreneurship, and ensuring corporate social responsibility would come together and make India what is called a self-reliant India. And what our Honorable Prime Minister says, it will make country an Atma-Nirbhar Bharat. So let us look at it. How do we go about making India self-reliant? By being a little more visionary, having a little more understanding, having a little more clarity, and how we can be agile all the time. So let me tell you, when I call the word leadership, leaders are not the prime ministers. Leaders are not the presidents. Leaders are not the Supreme Court judges. Leaders are you and me. Leaders are the teachers. Leaders are the students. Leaders are the educated people. Leaders are those who become the change they wish to see in the world. So when you want to look at the term leader, I'm not talking only about political leadership. I'm talking about all of us. If all of us are willing to become a leader, let me tell you, this world would become a better place and India would actually become a better idea. So let me just annotate word again. Yeah. So let's look at each of these factors one by one. When I talk of the term inclusivity, what does it mean? Let me tell you, probably I'm going to talk about these 5 solutions: inclusivity, sustainability, enabling the bottom of the pyramid, promoting frugal innovation and social entrepreneurship, and ensuring corporate social responsibility, which is my solution for making India Atmanirbhar in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And let me tell you, I say this is a result of my vision, my understanding, my clarity, and my agility, which I wish to pass on to everyone who is hearing me. Now, when you say inclusivity, what does it really mean? Inclusivity, according to father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, is recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man you've seen and ask yourself if this step you contemplate is going to be of any use to them. What does this mean? Whether you are a teacher, whether you are a manager, whether you are a bureaucrat, whether you are a judge, whether you are a political leader, no matter who you are, if your actions do not include the excluded, then your actions have no meaning in this country called India. Now, when I say the word India, I'll explain to you some of the things why India is so different than other countries. We are a country which follows division on various lines. You know, this country is very harsh to people who are old. This country is very harsh to people who are disabled. This country is very harsh to women. This country is very, very harsh to people who are poor. This country is very harsh to people with different sexual orientations. This country has been very, very harsh on people who are divided on different caste lines, gender lines. Of course, we need to reduce it. You know, these criteria are there in every society. We've seen the Second World War, and prior to Second World War, how Jews were exterminated by Hitler. We have seen problems in West Asian countries where Shias are fighting Sunnis. We've seen problems in America today where the blacks are, say, in minority and they did not have any right to even vote till 1965. What to call of blacks? United States of America did not give rights to women to vote till, say, 1920 or 20s or 30s. When Justice Ginsburg died recently, I would request all my students to read her biography and find out as much information about her. She fought for women's rights. Her entire life was devoted to women. Let me tell you, before you go to caste, class, anything else, first look at gender exclusion in India. Today, if you look at the boardrooms, very few women reach up to the boardrooms in this country. That means become directors on the board of companies. Very few women become vice chancellors in this country. Very few women actually. We just have, out of several prime ministers, just one single woman prime minister. Though we have had a large number of women who were ministers, right? So if you look at the factors for exclusion, if you reduce exclusion, if you remove this idea of marginalizing people, if you start including those who are marginalized, you start practicing inclusivity. It is an integral part of sustainable development, my next point. And remember, the less the exclusion, the less is the poverty and the impact of poverty in all its dimensions. Let me just एक minute. Now, if you look at the second factor, which is called sustainability. Now, what is sustainability? Now, sustainability actually is a word which we have picked up from nature. And nature, in other words, is a collection of ecosystems. Now, what does nature teach us? Nature teaches us symbiosis. What nature teaches us that organisms actually work together for benefit of the ecosystem. It's only human beings who violate this law of symbiosis. In simple terms, symbiosis actually means to get what you want, you need to give others what they want. Please put your mics on mute. Please put Prajwal Negi, everyone mic on mute, please.
अरे मम्मी
Prajwal Negi, please.
All
Tapanji
the
जरा इसको mute करिए.
participants are
Prajwal.
requested to keep their audio mute mode during the session. All the participants are requested to keep their audios on mute mode.
So, when you come to symbiosis, you need to give others what they want before you start getting what you want. So, in nature, actually, what happens? You know, a tree, when it grows up, it produces seeds, which produces more trees, and the tree dies. An animal grows and dies, and when it dies, it actually gives more, makes for soil more fertile. So, you know, whatever we do in a nature, it's a cyclical fashion, and we practice symbiosis. When you stop giving others what they want, you stop getting what you want. So when you are seeing the problems in today's environment and climate, it is because we have put a brake on this cycle. Sustainability talks about not wasting anything. Sustainability means that something remains forever. So nature also depletes and rebuilds, but it doesn't really waste. And then remember that for sustainability, remember, if you create sustainable products, these products like plastic is unsustainable. Use of plastics, use of detergents, which are not eco-friendly, they are a waste. They do not deplete and they don't rebuild. What they do is they stay in the climate and your environment. They stay in the environment. I'm using the wrong word, climate. They stay in the environment and then destroy your climate. So remember, sustainability would mean that you produce products and change the way you produce right products and change the way they are produced so that they deplete and rebuild. That's why we call this recyclable products. Another one is called adaptation. So when you say sustainability, there are three pillars: symbiosis, sustainability, adaptation. Adaptation, you know, from the famous idea, origin of species. You know, we say that this is, you know, when you look at the way species develop, they say survival of the fittest actually means that you shall survive and adapt and change in order to survive. Look at an example. This is a theory of Charles Darwin, right? 1880s. In 1955, a list called Fortune 500 companies was created. Out of those 500 companies in the original list, only 429 now remain. What do I mean by that? That means these companies could not adapt and could not survive. So when Charles Darwin gave his theory, it was not just about human beings and other species. It was, we have now started applying it to companies as well. So looking at this idea, these ideas, you should be careful that when you say sustainability, you should be talking about things which actually care for environment, which is the superset. The subset of this superset environment is called society. And the subset of society is our economy. So don't do things which affect your society and don't do things which affect your environment. It will become unsustainable. Mahatma Gandhi had said, the world has enough for every man's need, but not enough for one man's greed. So unsustainability actually is when you become greedy. And who has become greedy? Animals have not become greedy. Human beings have become greedy. You cut down the forests and you let the bats come for food in the cities. And actually you also eat up the bat also. And you are so greedy that you will not leave anything in this world. You will contaminate water, you will contaminate air, and then you will say, oh wow, everything is going wrong. Ultimately, it is our greed. Why should one family have more than one car when you don't have a parking space? Look at this city called Delhi. I live in Delhi. Families have 3 cars, 4 cars, and they don't want to use public transport. So what are they doing? Probably cars are bought and then they start using public transport. Then why were cars bought in the first place? So it is also the responsibility of the state to provide proper public transport. But it is also important for this country where 7.5 crore people plus have diabetes to start walking a bit, to start changing their habits. Why do you have to go to a market, nearby market on a scooter? Why can't you walk? Why can't you cycle? The fact is, we've become greedy, we've become lazy, and we think that the world would go. Remember, nature has its own way of taking revenge on you. All greedy and lazy people will probably become hypertensives and diabetics. And ultimately, you would realize, I was so better off. Now you're talking about, remember, coronavirus has told us how little do we need to live. So in Delhi's weddings, why do you have to have a 5,000, 7,000 rupee plates to be offered to your guests? And most of the guests actually were hypertensive and diabetics, just because you wanted to show off, the greed to show off, right? And the fact is, you destroyed the world in the process. You became unwell. You became diabetic. You got all sorts of diseases. And then you started saying, no, I can live without anything. Anyway, let's come back to the idea. To become sustainable, we need to be less greedy. We need to show off a little less. And we need to live a healthy life. For that, you just need to exercise, you need to eat less, and you need to accumulate more. Recently, I read a very interesting statement by Elon Musk. And Elon Musk said, the more I have, the more I feel, the more possessions I have, the more I feel weighed down. The more houses I have, the more I have to bother about taking care of those houses. The more clothes I have, the more I have to go to the dry cleaner, to keep those clothes in good shape. The more shoes I have, the more I have to spend in maintaining them. So why do you let your possessions weigh you down? Become a little less greedy. Follow what Father of the Nation said. So when something is socially and environmentally bearable, it's called sustainable. When something partially sustainable, when something is socially and economically equitable, it's partially sustainable. When something is environmentally and economically viable, it is partially sustainable. But when things around you are bearable, equitable, and viable, they are sustainable. So you add these 3 things up, look at social, economic, and environmental bearability, equitability, and viability, and then you come to understand the term sustainability. So Penn State University says, sustainability is simultaneous pursuit of human health and happiness, environmental quality, economic well-being for current and future generations. It says it is an ongoing and intentional process. It's a pursuit. It's an action-oriented pursuit, like maintaining your health, an ongoing effort. It's not a target that once you achieve sustainability, it is no longer considered. So interdependence of human and natural systems, looking to ecological principles as models, creating healthy, happy, and resilient communities, as well as healthy economy that recognizes ecological limits, is called practicing sustainability. So you must take decisions which recognize cause and effect across time, scale, and place. So remember, what you buy, how do you practice it? What you buy reflects who you are and who you want to be. When I gave the name of Elon Musk is known to be making autonomous cars, right? We are talking about electric cars. Remember, the key question when we get into these sustainable technologies is not why you buy or what you buy. You always ask a question, how you make it. So if you make something in a manner which can deplete and rebuild. So we are talking about now how hydrogen fuel cells. Now fuel cells, what they do, they create hydrogen and they create power, and the end result is water. So there's water vapor. The technology is already there. 2-3 years back, I visited Japan and I saw that Toyota already has a technology. They probably can introduce it. It's a little costly, the fuel cell cars. But if you create looking fuel cell cars, the problem of climate change may be resolved to a great extent. Similarly, the chlorofluorocarbons, which are used in our refrigeration systems, if you start using a different material, and then now most of the refrigerant companies are not using CFCs. So there's less carbon footprint and there is lesser chance of ozone layer depletion. So how you make a refrigerator, how you make a car will decide whether you will live in a sustainable world. Now, enabling the bottom of the pyramid. What do I mean by this? Now, this is very, very important for all the students and my colleagues to discuss. And what this actually means that when you say Gini's coefficient of India, I don't know if anybody understands. It's way beyond the highest possible limit of 0.5. It was somewhere around 0.5 in 2010. India's Gini coefficient started rising. We were most equal sometime around 1980. After 30 years of practicing socialism, India became a very equal country. But beyond 1980, we started becoming a little more unequal. By 2010, the Gini's coefficient had gone up to around 0.5, and now they say it is around 0.8. This is a very difficult situation. So there are two things you must understand. The first is called bottom of the pyramid. The first one is called top of the pyramid. What do I mean by top of the pyramid? This is a report which is created by Kotak Wealth Management, right? And it talks about India's high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals. And they're called HNIs and ultra HNIs. Remember, who are these people? These are people, HNI or high net worth individuals are people who have an investable surplus of rupees 25 lakh to 2 crore. So in a sense, more than 2 crore, 25 lakh to 2 crore are emerging HNIs. Anyone who has about 2 crores will be called HNIs in India, right? Or high net worth individual. So what happens that net worth is the amount by which your asset exceeds your liability. That means you have more money than, you own more than you owe. Asset means what you own, liability means that you owe. So those individuals whose assets exceed liabilities by between 25 lakhs to 2 crores are emerging high net worth individuals. Above 2 crores come under the categories of HNIs. And there are people sometimes say above 5 crores who are called ultra HNIs. Now, the ultra, sometimes new definition by Kotak Wealth Management, they say above 25 crores, ultra HNIs. But we assume that even by our extent, 5 crores, but Kotak Wealth Management, given the definition for 25 crores, different economists have different ideas. So you see that I say 25 lakhs to 2 crores, emerging HNI, 2 crore plus HNI. Some says 5 crores and some says 25 crore plus are called ultra HNIs. Now, the 7th edition of the Kotak Top of the Pyramid came in 2018. And it said that the ultra high net worth households in India went up by 10% in 2000. By 2017, the change from 2016 was around 10%. And it will double up to approximately, it was around 1,60,600 in 2017. And it will go up to 3,30,000 households by 2022. Now, the total net worth of India's ultra high net worth households. Now, these are, in terms of households, individuals, it's 5 crores. In households, it's always 25 crores. Now, they say that households which have more than 25 crores of net worth, their number would be more than 3 lakh by 2022. And their total net worth will become 352 trillion rupees. India's ultra high net worth individuals, on the other hand, are getting younger, and 60% of them approximately are less than 40 years of age. Look at the data. India's richest 1% hold more than 4 times the wealth held by 95 crore Indians. 953 million actually is 95 crores, who make up for bottom 70% of the country's population. So this data which I just showed you, ultra high net worth households which have net worth of more than 25 crores, which I'm saying this is the amount by which their assets exceed their liabilities, or ultra high net worth individuals who have their high, net worth increases 5 crores more than their liabilities. These numbers are huge. And these numbers actually mean that we are now sitting in a country where there are a lot of rich people who are owning a lot of wealth, but still in India, 1% of Indians hold more than 4 times the wealth held by 95 crore people in this country. The total wealth of 63 Indian billionaires is higher than the total union budget for 2018-19, which was 24,42,000 crores. Now just imagine, this 1% is called the top of the pyramid. Look at the top of the pyramid people. Where do they spend? They spend on health, they spend on luxury watches, apparels, holiday, abroad, often jewelry, automobiles, often philanthropy, electronic gadgets, and so on. These people largely, around the world are in high number. In fact, around 10 crore people in this world with wealth. This is another definition of top of the pyramid. With wealth with income more than $20,000. They are called top of the pyramid. Just tier 1 is there only. This is global, this thing. And people less than $1,500 per annum of income. And that is approximately people, 4 billion people in this world. In Indian context, India's wealthy. 92% Indians have wealth of less than $10,000. More than $100 million, 760. Just see the pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid, which is here, the bottom of the pyramid is around, this data actually is a little older, 2017 data. Just see, they say that the earlier data is a little, recent. The earlier data, 95 crore data, which they say, another report is around 2014. They say that poverty has diminished, but I don't know what they mean about it. But look at what the bottom of the pyramid actually does. These bottom of the pyramid people, they have low income, low literacy, low purchasing power. They purchase ration today, again next day, this week, next week. They are dependent on social network for their credits. They have inclination towards value for money. And, they basically buy food. They buy cheaper vegetables. They have meal rotation. Yesterday's rice mixed with water. They postpone their consumption. They pour milk in water so that everybody can drink. They replace shampoo. They wash their hair not with shampoo but toilet soap. This is out from a paper written, working paper from IIM Calcutta. And they basically use missed call. Missed call is something which only happens in India. Which was when your call prices, now we are not paying for calls actually. We're not paying for audio calls. We are only paying for data. But once upon a time, 10 years ago, people used to give missed calls. What was that? You had to pay a price to, call someone. So people would give a missed call. Tapaji, zara ye audio mute kariye. So the fact is that they are tailor-made services. So bottom of the pyramid actually is something. Around 77 crore people in this country do not have access to tools for developing themselves or living a proper life. So when you have this idea, you need to understand all of us have to get together. How do you solve it? You look at these bottom of the pyramid people as consumers and entrepreneurs. You allow the private enterprises, the civil societies, local government, development and aid agencies come together to develop these 77 crore people. Remember, the divide is huge. I said initially that India's Gini's coefficient is very, very high. And I gave you the proof. Some people say 95 crores, some people say 77 crore. Remember in 2011, we had a huge debate as to what is the poverty line in India. Nobody understands what poverty is. According to me, around 70 to 90 crore people are the bottom of the pyramid out of a population of 140 crore people. But the remaining are also not very well off. The only well off are top 1% or 2% people in this country. They are the top of the pyramid. Now they have to come together. Remember, this entire debate on labor laws being changed, this entire debate on farm bills being changed, all those people who are not watching Riya Chakravarti's programs and all those people who are not looking at those channels who only talk about drug problem in Hollywood, they must be, please watch some other channels where they debate these issues. They often give you data as to what does a change in labor law mean for India. They often debate matters, what does change in farm laws mean for India? And I would request my students to stop watching news on Bollywood, please. To stop watching news on all these bakwas ideas. Please look at how these BOP people who are living around you. In Delhi, we are living in islands of prosperity amongst sea of poverty. Recently, Supreme Court gave a judgment that 48,000 people who are living next to railway tracks be removed. The governments went in a tizzy. How can you just make 48,000 people vanish? All the governments got together. They said, sir, hamare paas makan hai. We will find out houses for them. We've created houses for them. They're in bad shape. We'll create them. And they went to Supreme Court and said, sir, we will remove them. Why? Supreme Court gave an order because people were dying. People lived next to the tracks. Why are we worrying so much about Bollywood and drug problem? A handful of people, when thousands and millions and probably crores of people are living in a very poor state. In fact, in Delhi and Mumbai, approximately 70% of the population lives in slums. So, bottom of the pyramid, don't see them as people who are dependent upon you for a grant or for your help. No, make them your partner. How do you make them your partner? So, change your strategy. The poor are not a problem. They are a market. The private sector, this is from C.K. Prahlad's, book, excellent book. Please read it. Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. So this book basically describes, and he wrote a wonderful piece on this. He said the private sector should make poor their partners. It should ensure that poor become a market for their product. So after that, we started seeing shampoo sachets. So for a 50 paise, you can get a shampoo sachet. So you are selling your product to a poor man. He can now, no longer the daughter of a poor man is using a soap in her hair. She is now using a small shampoo sachet, which is affordable. Don't look at poor as gods of the state. Look at them as consumers and entrepreneurs. Convert them into entrepreneurs and businessmen. Don't, think that poor do not appreciate new technology. No, poor understand technology better than the rich. Remember, rich kids, people whose daughters and sons we teach, they use internet for chatting, Facebook, social networking, watching Amazon Prime and Netflix. The poor, I work with a company where I'm sitting on the board of directors of the company. We are 350,000 rural entrepreneurs who use internet for making a living. Some of them have now become crorpatis. And this scheme of the government is called Common Services Center Scheme. They are connected through a broadband system across the country and they provide government services to people around them. And there are 350,000 such people living in villages. They don't watch Netflix. They don't watch Amazon Prime, but they use technology for a living, for making a living and making this world a better place. So what I've seen, the middle classes don't understand it. The poor understand it better. A poor man's son created Paytm. I'm talking about whom you know. So if you look at Paytm, the model was very simple. They said that people don't have change. So let's create a mobile wallet. Right? Vijay Shekhar Sharma. Not a rich man, not an IIT alumnus. So who brings about a change? It's poor who brings about a change. So technology again, they understand technology better. So follow the Western model of development, we say? No. Selectively leapfrog, find out local ideas and innovate. Focus on resource constraints. They say, no, there is no constraints. Focus on the creativity of the poor and their entrepreneurship. You have capital limitations for poor? No, there is no limitation. There is limitation on information and access. Don't talk about capital. Are you giving enough information to poor? In US, they give information so they can create companies. They can raise money. There could be crowdfunding. Tell a poor man the idea of crowdfunding and he will create something very good for you. He'll get capital, he'll raise capital. So there are constraints on imagination. There are no constraints on creativity, So then again, efficiency in a known model, no. Innovate and develop a new model. So I am quoting here Muhammad Yunus. I heard him speaking in Indian Parliament in 2007. I noted it down. Since then, this quote remains with me. Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel laureate, said, "To me, poor people are like bonsai trees. When you plant the best seed of the tallest tree in a flower pot, you get a replica of the tallest tree, only inches tall. There's nothing wrong with the seed you planted, only the soil base that is too inadequate. Poor people are bonsai people. There is nothing wrong in their seeds. Simply, society never gave them the base to grow on. All it needs to get the poor people out of poverty for us to create an enabling environment for them. Once the poor can unleash their energy and creativity, poverty will disappear very quickly. Look at this statement. So, poor people, they are frugal innovations and social entrepreneurship. Very quickly. What is frugal innovation? It is low cost, high value innovation for the end user or consumer. It is a process of reducing complexity and cost of goods and its production while increasing durability and without compromising quality. And it also refers to removing non-essential features from durable goods, such as car or a phone, in order to sell it in developing countries at large volumes or low cost. All these together come into category of frugal innovations. So in India, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan's example, who brought in green revolution. I request my students to read more about him. So there was a time India was not producing enough wheat, say 4 million tons was our production. And from 4 million tons to 4,000 years ago, from 4 million tons to 1950s, we were getting 10 million tons production yield of wheat. Dr. Swaminathan's strategies converted that to 17 million tons by 1967. And today, India produces 110 million tons of wheat. Frugal innovation. Sonalika, Kalyan Sona, several of the varieties Dr. Swaminathan developed. Varghese Kurian. India has large number of buffalo, but India was one of the lowest producers of milk. Why? Buffalo milk was to be immediately consumed. There was no way of saving it. There was formula available for converting cow milk, but cow yield is very, very low. What Varghese Kurian did in 1970s through Anand Milk Union Limited and National Dairy Development Board, he got a formula for converting buffalo milk into powder, which could be stored for a longer period. India today is the largest producer of milk in the world. E. Sridharan. Nobody thought of local transport the way Sridharan thought. The most sustainable, the most cost-effective transport in the world actually is Delhi Metro. DMRC is local transportation converted to Indians' needs. It is a transportation which has been adapted for our use. Nowhere metro works like this. Even in Japan, the way it's, of course, a Japanese funded project. Sam Pitroda, if you got phones in 1990s, it was due to Sam Pitroda's C-Dot. Some of the big examples of classic frugal. See this slide. I saw this 15-20 days back on NH24. So there's a bike. This is a TVS bike with a headlight from TVS, engine from TVS. But because he needs double headlights, he's got a steering wheel from LML Vespa, right? And yes, he has connected it with another tire and he's using it to transfer some furniture from A place to B place. Look at another jugaad on the right-hand side. An old man dropping his grandchildren to school. So he's put a machine here. This machine is actually his pump set. So later on, when he'll drop his kids to school, he'll come back, he will remove this pump set from this and put it in the fields. It will help him draw water from underground and he will use it to irrigate his crop. So it's a transportation tool, it's an irrigation tool, and it's called jugaad. These are called frugal innovations. A lot of examples. Mobile banking solutions in Africa. You know, M-Pesa came from Africa, Safaricom's M-Pesa, where they use, UPI in India is one of its kind. Aadhaar-enabled payment system in India, one of its kind. Mobile wallet, one of its kind. You've got Bajaj Qute, quadricycle by Bajaj Auto, one of its kind. Nano by Tata, one of its kind. Chotu Cool, a refrigerator which does not use by Godrej, does not use a compressor, one of its kind. It uses a thermoelectric cooling system rather than compressors. Jaipur leg, where poor people who lose their limbs in accidents, they get a cheaper leg, a prosthetic leg, which is at a low cost. You know, this costs about $150, which probably about 8 to 10,000 rupees, and it is easily fitted and it is easily maintainable. Social entrepreneurship, along with jugaad, is a combination of commerce with social issues. We are now talking about SEBI has set up a committee for setting up a social stock exchange. It is in the cards now. It will come. It is there in some countries. So social entrepreneurs are concerned with society, ecology, environment, and sustainable development. And unlike non-profits, social entrepreneurs make money, but they make money in a sustainable way. Their focus is on sustainable development while making a profit. Some examples. You got Ms. Urvashi Sani. She is the founder of Study Hall Education Foundation and she's worked with 900 schools and changed the life of 150,000 girls directly, 270,000 girls indirectly. And she was Entrepreneur of the Year 2017. Mr. Harish Hande, he runs a company, which is called Selco. And this company renders sustainable energy sources to rural regions of the country. Till date, he has contributed 120,000 solar panel installation, right? And has more than 25 operating retail and service centers in Karnataka alone. People Venture, Mr. Santosh Pantosh, he is the person who has created a company called People Tree, a company that imparts formal training to youth and gives them jobs. Right? He has trained over 1,500 workers and intends to open more training centers across the country. Miss Sumita Ghosh, founder of Ashoka Changemakers, she has Rangasutra, right, which she helps, sell their clothes. It's a huge success. Local, rural individuals and, those clothes which they produce in rural India. Sharad Vivek Sagar, Dexterity Global, at the age of, he founded this company at the age of 16. And he has provided opportunities to more than 1.2 million Indians, right? He allows them to get jobs and admissions here and there, right? And he is among the Rockefeller Foundation has inducted him in the list of next century, innovators. So he is also listed in the Forbes 30 under 30 list. So, what we need to understand that we can have social responsibility. Say we can have a social entrepreneurship, and what we need more is social responsibility. What do I mean by social responsibility? It's a simple idea. Companies have a lot of funds. So, average of 3 years of funds, some percentage be calculated, 1%, 2%, 3%. You donate and you start it for some activity. India is one of the first, this is again Indian innovation. We are one of the first countries in the world to make CSR mandatory. In fact, this year, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman, prior to COVID, had made even more stringent this idea. But now a lot of corporates complain because they don't have money. So, these businesses can put their money in several places like education, gender equality, removing hunger and poverty, and so on. So, the companies which have more than 500 crores or more annual turnover or 1,000 crores or more of net profits, say, let me read it carefully. Know this. The Companies Act 2013 requires companies with a net worth of 500 crore or more, or an annual turnover of rupees 1,000 crore or more, or net profit of 5 crores or more, to spend 2% of their average net profits of 3 years in CSR. So this is something which is very, very mandatory, and people should do it. And you can always move forward with CSR as a big idea. So recently we have new law which has not been implemented. The regulation still not out. They can put a monetary penalty which companies do not engage. So we need to convert the corporate profits into social well-being. So I'll finish here, and I'll give you 10 minutes to ask questions. I'll finish this at 12:10. The policy prescription for building New India is promote inclusivity. And in this VUCA world, ensure sustainability, engage with the bottom of the pyramid, promote frugal innovation and social entrepreneurship, and ensure responsibility of the corporates towards society. Remember, Mahatma Gandhi said, we must live the change you want to see in the world. He said this somewhere in 1930. Arlene Lawrence changed it to the new statement, be the change you wish to see in the world. So with these words, I close my presentation. Over to Manisha ji and her team, Rajinder ji and the team. Some questions we can take, 3 or 4 questions. Then I'll close down because I have to go to hospital to take care of my old father. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for taking time to speak to us on a very relevant and trendy topic. Thank you once again, sir, for a wonderful session. Sir, some questions are there. So can I start the question answer session?
Please. मैं stop कर रहा हूँ.
Am I audible?
Yeah, please.
So,
yes.
Sir, first question is from Ravi Narayan, sir, about Make in India policy adopted by the Indian government. Foreign enterprises and corporate houses are being invited to produce and sell goods in India. And this is leading to carbon emission, pollutants, and other environmental hazards in our country, and thus running counter to this sustainable development process. So they have started actually sustainable development process to counter this. So, sir, he is asking about this whole scenario or this whole two-way policies, you can say. So, please highlight on this, sir.
Point here.
One way you are inviting other countries and other, and second.
I'll tell you, you got to be very careful when you invite from technology from other countries. Ensure that those are clean and green technologies. Right. In 1980s, we invited Suzuki Motors to set up a joint venture called Maruti Udyog Limited. And they produced cars. Now, at that time, if you had put them under a constraint that by 1995 you'll start producing hybrid cars, by 2000 you'll start producing electric cars, by 2010 you'll be fully electric, you would have actually talked about sustainability. Remember, the responsibility of ensuring clean technology lies with the government and the regulators. Do not allow aged. Remember what happens. This is the product life cycle theory of Raymond Vernon. Raymond Vernon in 1966 gave his theory, which is a very well-known theory in marketing also and international business also, that, there's a cycle for everything like a human being. So it says introduction, growth, maturity, decline. So like products, once their products fail in their countries, they introduce these products to developing countries. And once the product stop selling in developing countries through exports, they set up factories in developing countries. So India, just see what India has done. We have jumped from Bharat stage 4 to Bharat stage 6 directly, right? And what we have done is we've ensured that any car which is manufactured in India will follow these emission norms. So while Make in India, remember there are thousands of products which are made through thousands of technologies. You need to have a very effective system to ensure that technologies which affect climate adversely are not implemented on ground. The problem of India is that our rivers are very dirty. Now, most companies basically use technologies which are old technologies, also do not have, the right kind of treatment plants, which we call water treatment plants in companies. Now, that untreated water goes into rivers and contaminates the rivers. In fact, we've been very slow in terms of our sewage treatment plants also. It's not just that foreign companies come and destroy our environment. You almost always see a fair amount of froth in Yamuna River. It comes out of the detergents we use in Delhi. It comes out of 80% of Yamuna is polluted by Delhi residents. Remember, whatever you manufacture, whatever you use, you should be careful that the product you use should be environment friendly. So when you implement technologies or allow companies also to bring in technology, I hope now that the governments are capable. But the only problem is the cost of technology transfer. The cost of technology transfer often becomes too high. That's why second-grade technology is brought into the country. But I simply feel that yes, industrialization is important, as I showed you in one of the slides. Remember that you need to be having reliable technologies which are efficient and equitable. Do not bring in technologies which are efficient but unreliable, and they also destroy your environment. So the lesson lies with those people who run our country, that don't let people come into this country in a blind way. Also, not just foreigners. Most of this country is destroyed by Indians only. India is a country where, we have a proverbial Vibhishan here, right? Ghar ka bedi lanka dhai. India is being destroyed by largely Indians, and who is buying cars in India? Indians. Why do Indians buy a car? They want to buy a car which is not, they always look at a car in terms of price. How much does it cost? You want to sell a cheap car in India, even if it is not environment friendly, it will sell. So this is something, and that's why electric cars are not so popular. You have electric cars available in India. Who is buying it? Because it is costly to run. It is costly to buy actually in the first place. And then of course, maintenance is a problem, but so many things. But the point is, my own idea is that industrialization should not be at the cost of environment or climate. You end up paying a huge cost in terms of poor health of your children, in terms of poor health of your parents, and in terms of your own ill health also. Right.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is, what are the leadership challenges in India in this VUCA world?
As I said, our leadership challenges are, again, they are not practicing inclusivity. we are seeing more and more leaders who are into a divisive trend, right? Say Donald Trump. So a black man gets killed, he's not unhappy. He says, okay, hota rehta hai. Similarly, you are seeing a divisive trend across the world. More people are killing each other because of their caste, creed, gender. In India, Madam Anubha is talking to me because her father did not make her mother undergo a test for gender. If your father, when you were in your mother's womb, if your father had tested your gender, do you know, Anubha ji, Manisha ji, how difficult it is to be a woman in this country? You rape a 3-year-old, you rape a 10-year-old, you rape a 70-year-old. You charge dowry, ठीक है? People are rich, they are allowed to pay dowry. अच्छा, अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट की रूलिंग आ गई कि महिलाओं को प्रॉपर्टी में हक 1955 से मिलेगा. भाइयों ने बहनों को मारना शुरू कर दिया. मैंने उस दिन अपनी पत्नी से कहा कि अब रक्षाबंधन और भाई दूज इस देश में नहीं मनेगा. There was a case which came from Chennai where a sister's nephews came and beat her up just because she shared this ruling of Supreme Court on WhatsApp or on Facebook. So gender discrimination. So we are not practicing inclusivity from our hearts. एक तो हिंदुस्तान की या सभी देशों की नई समस्या क्या हो गई, लोग दिमाग ज्यादा लगाते हैं, दिल नहीं लगाते. We apply our brains too much, not our minds and hearts. If you think carefully, if you become more inclusive, if we become more sustainable, right? If we allow poor to become our partners, that is what the leadership challenge is. We are making an economy much more equal. I said we were most equal in 1980. Why is it that we are breaking the state-run education system? Why are we getting private sector everywhere? Why we had broken up the state-run hospital systems? The best education people get is in the state-run. Poor people have only one hope, to the government, which runs on the taxes of common man, right? Poor people cannot always believe in those profit-seeking. Remember, I read a news 3 days back. Amartya Sen was speaking somewhere. He said India has a problem. What problem? We have low fee charging private schools and we have high fee charging private schools. And the state-run system is completely inefficient. Schools. Now, the problem is that the low fee charging private schools have very poor quality of education, which are there in large number of towns and cities and villages. The high fee charging schools are there in big cities. Now, these children who study in high fee charging cities are much more capable as white collar workers than those poor people who are unable to speak 2 words of English and add 2 + 2 by the time they are in class 8th. They are reading. When we did this last time, we participated in global school survey. We got 71st rank, out of 73 countries. We stopped participating in it. So, what I'm saying is the challenge to leadership is about inclusivity, is about equity, right? Is ensuring that bottom of the pyramid is engaged with. What I'm seeing here is that the bottom of the pyramid, as I became the director of this institute, I have introduced, a scholarship for women. I have introduced a scholarship for economically weaker section. I have introduced a scholarship for Corona warriors. I said, why are you giving scholarship on unnecessary marks 90% scholarship? अरे यार वो तो 90% वाले को तो सब जगह एडमिशन मिल ही रहा है यार, क्या बकवास कर. Try giving managerial education to people who are poor and convert them into leaders. We need to have our poor brothers and sisters in this country become leaders of tomorrow. And let me tell you, leadership अगर आएगी तो गरीबों से आएगी क्योंकि वो persistent होते हैं. Remember, one of the basic talent, one of the basic, competences all leaders have is called persistence. और गरीब अमीर से ज्यादा persistent होता है क्योंकि अमीर का बच्चा थक जाता है, गरीब के बच्चे को डायबिटीज भी नहीं होती है. अमीर वाले को चश्मा भी लग जाता है और उसको डायबिटीज 25 साल में हो जाती है, 30 साल में हाइपरटेंसिव हो जाता है, 40 साल में मैं फादर की डायलिसिस कराता हूं, 25-25 साल के लड़के डायलिसिस करा रहे हैं आज की डेट में. क्यों? बॉडी बिल्डिंग का प्रोटीन ज्यादा खा लिया, किडनी खराब हो गई. बाहर का खाना खाते हैं, Ajinomoto wala khana khate. I think somewhere down the line, the leadership challenges is to, again, India's biggest challenge is poor healthcare and education system. We need to bring in the role of the state. I am not in favor of removing the role of the state. I was so unhappy when 12 college teachers were not getting salary in Delhi. I was so unhappy when 4,000 teachers were sitting in Vice Chancellor's house and he did not even talk to them. These were all teachers who were called contract teachers. I am not in favor of running a country with profit-seeking motive. That's why I gave you example of social entrepreneurship. बहुत हो गई entrepreneurship, sir. अब जरा गरीबों की सोच ले लें, नहीं तो फिर देश में कुछ बचेगा नहीं. That is the idea. So leadership challenge is equity. Yes, madam, one more.
Sir, this is the last question. What is the impact of VUCA word in our education system?
Madam, the biggest challenge today for education system is again inequity. So what has happened? People who have laptops high-end, people who have mobile high-end, they can get education. People who do not have are committing suicide. Right? When you have inequity, the biggest challenge for education is inequity. The biggest challenge for education today is reducing role of the state in education system. The biggest challenge for education is less women participating at top levels in education system. I will wait till the day I see a vice chancellor who is woman in Delhi University. All universities can have women vice chancellors. Why not Delhi University? The fact is, we are now talking about education, which is now becoming a preserve of the elite. That is one big challenge. The rising fee, requirement of more infrastructure for schools. We still are practicing output-oriented education, whereas the world is talking about input-oriented education. If you can't do that, you are playing with fire. And again, I am very, very sorry that no matter what happens, the plight of teachers in this country does not change. The government is very, very clever when it comes to pay commissions for implementing pay commission for the bureaucrats, for implementing pay commission for ABCD, Army, Navy, Air Force, they will have 10 representations. For teachers, we need to have right human resource policies. And for teachers, we need to have right payment mechanisms, and it should be enforced across the country. Probably new education policies are hope. That's where I thank the Honorable Prime Minister, because they have made accreditation mandatory for all organizations, and they'll be forced now to ensure right working conditions for all employees. I'm talking about non-teaching employees also. Education in this country has fallen on a blind spot. That is the biggest challenge. Let education come on the focus. That is my request. Right, madam? Thank you very much. I got to leave for somewhere for the hospital. So, right. Thank you.
So, thank you so much, sir. It was once again a wonderful academic treat for all of us.
Right.
Thank you, sir, for
so,
such an
continue with the program. I'll just, leave the meeting. It'll take half an hour for me to go to Delhi. From there, half an hour to go to Noida, where there are no hospitals which are treating dialysis patients now. So we found very difficulty one hospital, right? Right.
Okay. Sir, can I invite my TIC sir for formal vote of thanks, if you have some 2 minutes? Sir, I request my TIC sir.
You can go ahead, please. Yeah.
I think sir has already left, I think. he was in hurry, and
but you can go with your vote of thanks. No issues.
Yes sir, yes sir. Sir से मेरी कल भी बात हुई थी. कोई नहीं, ठीक है अनुबा, ठीक है. Thank you for inviting me. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has contributed in the successful conduct of this webinar. First of all, I am very grateful to the resource person, Professor Alok Pandey. He has left, but I will thank him in his absence also. Sir, thank you very much for sharing some time for us from your very busy schedule and sharing your knowledge with us. This session was very informative and very interesting, and I would say it was very thought-provoking also. He has touched upon very social issues also, be it gender discrimination or like poverty in India, and what is the impact of these things on our economy. And it was very interesting session, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. Then I'm very thankful to our principal, Dr. Shiv Kumar Sahdev, for always being very helpful and very supportive. Sir, you are a continuous source of inspiration for all of us. I'm very thankful to Professor Tapan Naik sir also. He's from IMS Ghaziabad. I was in touching with him for some discussion on this webinar and some other things. Sir, thank you very much for your immense help. It was not possible without your help, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It was help.
My pleasure. My
because of
pleasure.
you only. Thank you very much, sir. I'm very thankful to my colleague and my friend, Dr. Ramesh Kumar Malik, the convener of this webinar. He has done great efforts in successful conduct of this event. And I'm also thankful to my senior colleagues of the Department of Commerce, Ms. Soman Kharbanda and Dr. Ravinaran Samantra sir, for their help and motivation. Then I would like to thank the other member of the organizing team, Ms. Manisha Rani, Dr. Anubha, Supriya, Banita, and Jyoti. They have been working very hard for last a week, almost a week, for the preparation of this webinar. And last and not least, I'm very thankful to all the participants who have showed interest and attended this webinar. I'm sure that we all have benefited from this very interesting and informative session. Once again, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajendraji. I'm just going to close this meeting, and I expect that once this corona pandemic gets over, we all meet soon.
Sure,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.